Hey, welcome to the Cam And Otis Show. And I am excited to have my friend from Kiwi land, my non-Kiwi Kiwi friend, transplanted Brit into Kiwi, and I feel like I want to get into that. But Sinjin is here, and you know what's going to be fun about this is agriculture and sales. Man, you know, somebody's probably turning the switch right now, you know, the old dial, the agricultural sales. But you know what? There's so much to learn about that and how to be successful in your life and in your business. So, Sinjin, man, good to see you.
Great to be here, Otis. Really been looking forward to this one.
Yeah, man, and so am I. I'm just... What got you into sales? Did you wake up one morning and go, I could sell anything? Or was it you kind of turned around and looked back and go, how the hell did I get here?
Yeah, look, a lot of people ask themselves that when they get into sales. I don't think anyone wakes up or is born going, I'm going to be a salesperson. I, like a lot of people, kind of fell into it through a very non-linear way. I started... with an advertising agency background, worked for some big companies in the UK, Australia and New Zealand, and then I did some corporate gigs, and I did this sort of marketing role. So I was a brand manager, I was a marketing manager, and then I sort of kind of learned that I was getting good feedback from the market in terms of business development. So I used to do that. I used to go out and hunt. Not elks, I might add, Otis, but like I used to go and hunt for clients. And so off I go and we'd get some clients, and then people said, hey, you're really good at what you do. Why don't you do more of the sales side and less of the marketing side? But I think we'll probably get into it a bit more about how those two connect, and I know we'll have a good chat about that. So that's kind of how I ended up in sales. But, you know... I've always said that a lot of people aren't proud of the connotation of sales because they've had such bad sales experiences. But actually, if you're good at sales, you'll never go hungry, and you'll always be able to feed your family. And the top salespeople in any sector, whether it's agriculture or rural or tech or FMCG or consumer or whatever it happens to be, they'll make more money than the CEO if they're really good at what they do.
Oh, that's so true, so true. And I laugh because now that you said that, it just reminds me of a conversation I had with one of the fellows that I'm coaching, one of the guys that's transitioning out of the service. And somebody had talked to him about this sales job and how much money he could make with the commission. And I was like, well, yeah, but you know, you gotta make the sales to get that money. So be careful with the big picture of I can make $250K in a year. Yeah, that's a lot of sales you got to close in that.
Yes, you do. And then you know, naturally, there's a massive bell curve, right? So like probably what I find when I get the privilege of training teams, if say it was a team of 10, let's use some simple maths. There'll be one or two that are almost doing 80% of the sales. So it's a classic Pareto principle. It's an 80-20 rule, and you see it, that mass, that fractal everywhere. So the top guys, it's like real estate agents, like the top guys and girls make most of the money, and the rest of them kind of follow. So, yeah.
Barely scraping by. All right, so the next thing that we just got to share is how in the world did you go from corporate marketing to sales to ag business sales? Yeah,
it's a weird, wonderful journey. I come off farm in the UK, so my parents were farmers. So I grew up on a farm in rural England, in the southeast of England. And we're always surrounded by farmers, and I had a really, really privileged upbringing. I enjoyed the land, the country, the space. I've never really been a city boy. You know, great for a weekend, but I'm a country boy at heart. And I went and I beat about 50 people to my one place at university. It was the first degree course of its kind in the UK. It was down at Bournemouth University, which is the government were putting a lot of money into, the UK government, to make it more vocational. So it was around advertising, marketing and media. And it was the only degree course of its kind. So I kind of had that rural background. And then I had this sort of fascination and curiosity around advertising, marketing, media, and why people buy. And because of that, I then found myself in some corporate gigs and in some agency gigs. And after that, I sort of maybe kind of blended them all, really. So, you know, I'm no polymath, but like I just blended rural and marketing and sales, and then got really, really fascinated ever since I've been a young boy why people buy. Like I think if you get curious about human behaviour, which I'm sure we'll unpack a lot more of, it's amazing how fascinating the world can be and how more successful you can be when you truly understand why people do what they do.
How did you synthesize those different areas and find that path forward? Because you very easily could have, you know, kept one foot in you know, the ag area, kept a foot in the sales, and kind of done both. But you chose to put them all together. So how did you come to that conclusion?
Yeah, look, I mean, it was really, I think it was more by chance than by design. I think the more and more I've read, and I'm a bit grey and lacking a bit more hair these days, but like the more and more I read around putting valuable skill sets together. So one of my coaches said to me, you want to have rare and valuable skills. Rare and valuable skills, because then you create your own category and you become a specialist. And I think we talked, Otis, when we had you on our show, we talked about the importance of being the cardiologist, not the GP. So you must be a specialist, because when you're a specialist, specialists, you know, they're in demand. You can command higher prices. So it was really important not to be, Cam, you're a really good question there, a commodity, but actually take, rare and valuable skill sets, but combine them. So the strength and the competitive advantage for anyone is taking some skills that you're good at, but blending them in a way that is a rare and valuable combination. And I think that was very good advice I was given.
That's awesome, and I find that fascinating. And you know, since you brought it up, and it's one of my favorite things is you know, I don't know if you know, I think there's a threshold in life where you cross, and it's like, you know, I can sit on the bench in this mall or open area and just watch people and see how people act and interact, and it's just kind of a fascinating thing. Actually, somebody I was with one time, we played a game of, you know, couple no couple sort of thing, and you know, so let's dive into that a bit in the why do people buy? What's that human nature that you just get excited about?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. I suppose it's a genuine fascination with human behaviour, and I think if I had my time again, I probably would have studied psychology formally at university. I mean, we did consumer science and market research and insight stuff, but the reason people buy is very biological. So we all know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You know, we need shelter, and we need food, and we need water, and all those things at a very basic level. And then as we go up the triangle, or up the tree, so to speak, we then get into the importance of actually genetic worth. So this is where it becomes very biological, and it's kind of related back to farming. But basically, to keep it simple for listeners, is that our brain buys to signal our genetic worth to the opposite sex or same sex, whatever you're into. And so basically you have what we call conspicuous fitness signals. So when we buy things, we are generally buying them to signal our worth to others. Now, if we're buying salt from Target or Kmart, a commodity, then sure, it's not a problem. But if we're buying a car or we're buying a piece of clothing, usually there is more of a psychological, more emotional involvement, higher decision purchase for why we're buying that thing. Not everyone, because everyone says,
are they directly proportional? Like the value, the amount I spend? No? Oh,
no,
okay.
There's not sort of a cutoff. I mean, it also depends on the persona of the person that you're talking to. Mm-hmm. But if you go back to, like, when I get the privilege of training teams, they go, oh, but we're different, or our customer's different, or our market's different. Bullshit. I hope I don't mind the few curse words here. It's not true. It's all the buyers' brains work exactly the same. If you're talking to someone in Italy or Orlando or Auckland, wherever you happen to be on the planet, the buyer brain buys the same, because the brain is wired to survive. Mm. And the way we survive is through basic reproduction and genetic lineage. So I think it's Jeffrey Miller. He had a beautiful book called Spent, and he's an evolutionary psychologist. So he's very Darwinism. And making it easy again, because it gets very heavy, is our brain buys at a very basic level and biological level, and then it gets more and more complicated as the price of that product goes up. So if you're buying houses or businesses or cars, you're making a statement. So for instance, I would talk about if you buy a Honda Accord, which I hope is a model in the States, a Honda, a basic family sedan Honda, well, that's great, but you could also buy a Hummer. But you're making a different statement about who you are. But the thing is, it's an emotional decision, because the Honda or the Hummer will still get you from A to B. That's its role. Its rational function, its job is to get you from A to B as a transportation device. But a Honda says different things to you as opposed to a Hummer. A Hummer says, I'm the big dog, I'm the alpha, and I'm worthy of reproductive lineage without being too crass. I'm the guy to be with, or I'm the girl to be with, because I've got the money and I can afford this kind of stuff. So if it's a Jimmy Choo shoe, or it's an Apple Mac, or the latest iPhone, so that whole brand psychology above a certain level of basics, commodities and fundamentals is why the brain buys at a very basic level, and then we can obviously get into more about the specificity of signaling and all that sort of stuff. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, and don't forget to throw in the F-250 in there.
Yeah, great machines. I mean, we've been watching here in New Zealand. What's that show on Netflix with Kevin Costner with the ranch?
Yellowstone,
and he has a massive pickup truck,
Yes.
And we in fact we're at a mate's house couple of weekends ago, and he's got a great big Chevy 6.2, which you'd be very proud of as Yankees, and he just adores it. Like, we have little car parking spaces here in the supermarkets here in New Zealand, and he has to go across two because it's so bloody big. Yeah, so he thinks he's like that. He thinks he's Yellowstone,
Yeah, does he wears his hat? He has his big jacket.
Pretty much has to have a ladder to get out of the car. Yeah.
Do you think that your international background helps at all with, the lens to understand these different things, of looking at the different personas and, where things are valued differently? Because as you're talking, you talk about the different personas that value, different items, genetic or psychologically, that it makes me think of, a business going somewhere else and they don't understand the personas there. And so they're trying to sell, the F-250 to somebody who doesn't value the big truck the same way. And so do you think that perspective helps a lot?
I think internationally, I'm not some sort of international man of mystery or some Austin Powers type. I would just say that I've always been fascinated with the buyer. I think buyers' brains, to answer your question, Cam, buyers' brains are boundaryless. They transcend boundaries and geographical areas. So the fundamental psychological makeup of the human brain is the same in every brain. We have parts of our brain that have different things that their functions to do, whether it's the amygdala, which is our reptilian, our oldest part of our brain, at the back of our heads here, at our brainstem. That is a fight, flight, freeze. Its only job is to keep us alive. That thing was going off like all the time during COVID. And then obviously you have our limbic brain, which is our emotional brain. And this is why we choose to buy Hummers, not Hondas, because if we weren't emotional, we wouldn't be buying. We call it the Mercedes effect. So sorry if anyone's driving a Merc. But like, it's a Euro. Why are you driving a European car when you could be just buying a Japanese car or even an American-built car? You're signaling. It's social signaling. And then further, it's back to Maslow, the sort of transcendence and higher, sense of self is then interesting around pursuing yourself, and then that's the executive function of your prefrontal cortex. But again, don't want to get too deep into the brain stuff, but like, understand why people buy and what they want, and you'll be able to sell more to them. So stop focusing on selling and start focusing on buying.
And that made I thought of this, and I think it could be an interesting discussion. The bartering and why some people are really good at the barter, and some people are like, what's going on in that, the market, you know those markets where they're, name a country, and we've all walked those markets. And So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about that because I'm fascinated by it.
So there's this principle which I reckon Daniel Kahneman, he's a Nobel Prize behavioral economist. He won a Nobel Prize, excuse me, for this. And it's called the concept of loss aversion. And it's in a book called Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. It's a monster of a book. It's a weapon of a book. But if I had to do an extreme executive summary, I'd sum it down into 2 words. Better than blink list. I'd go loss aversion. So the reason why we love negotiating or bartering is because we're trying to protect ourselves from the pain of loss. Now, when we pay over a certain amount, our brain is triggered by the same pain centers as physical pain because we're losing money in the exchange of something. So we all work hard for our money, and then we want to buy something. We want to feel like we are not losing as much as we perceive we're going to lose. So we barter and we negotiate. So we go to the car yard, or we go to the John Deere dealership to buy the compact tractor or the header or the chaser bin or whatever you're into, or the barbecue from Home Depot, whatever, and you want a deal. Everyone wants to do a deal. And you want to do a deal because you want to physiologically feel better about that purchase, and it softens the blow. So the brain goes, I'm not going to pay full sticker price. I'm going to pay a little less so I feel better about myself, and then my brain allows me to buy it.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of the study I remember going through in college of breaking down, I think the 2 stores was a Walmart and then the Kroger brand, the fries and the King Soopers here in the U.S. And one of them is the everyday low price and one of them is the sales price, where they're always cycling the sales. And the irony there, of course, is that, if you go from the pure economic level, that Walmart's going to get you the better price every single day and you will pay less in the long run there. But yet everyone flocks over to the other store because of that loss aversion, that they want to win that psychological battle. And that actually kind of sets up something that I think is interesting as we talk about the psychology of sales. There's this thought that I've had occasionally where when you talk about breaking down the psychology of sales, and there's people that could, of course, I'd say like weaponize it in the bad way versus trying to help people and that kind of thing. But then I think on a more basic level, talking about the consumer, consuming the ads and the marketing and all that kind of stuff, do you think that there's and this is not a word, just get ready, over psychologying of it to the fact that if everyone even if you're doing it for a good reason,
I don't even know how to pronounce that or spell that. Yeah.
Yeah, even if it's a good reason behind the marketing, that because everyone's kind of playing that game, that it burns out the consumer or any sort of effect like that.
I think, let's unpack that a wee bit. I think the brain is, remember when we were all cavemen and cavewomen, we couldn't talk. So we had to look at body language first. This is why we shake hands to check there isn't a weapon concealed. This is why when we open our necks, we feel vulnerable. And when we scratch our heads, we're processing decision making. So if I'm scratching my chin here, I'm actually mentally processing something like Otis was doing just then when we were talking. So what it is, yes, I think the psychologically side can be dialed up sometimes too bad and too big, and it's disingenuous. And you can kind of out-psych or out-market. I think there's a lot of people in the world that actually don't understand how well marketers and marketing and brands do psychology. Like an example, Camden, would be social proof. Because everyone's got it, it must be good. So when we are making a purchase, and maybe it's a new product, we will follow the crowd. We are herd animals. Because we want to minimize risk, which is back to loss aversion, right? We don't want to make a mistake because it robs us of resources. It might even rob us of reputation because we look like a prize Wally to our friends because we've made a mistake. And they're like, what did he buy that pickup truck for? What did he buy that tractor for? Why did he buy that barbecue for? You should have bought this one. So maybe I'm not answering the question, but there are a number of psychological drivers and biases that are often at play. And yeah, I agree. Some companies do it genuinely well, and some people do it just genuinely well. I mean, again, we've all watched Social Dilemma and what's happened with Google and Facebook and Amazon. Fear factor, fear of missing out, scarcity bias, you go to Expedia and they go, someone's just booked this hotel room. There's only one left. This is all manufactured scarcity. Mm-hmm. So it compels us to buy. So the thing is to understand when it's being done to you, not just doing it to other people. So there's a duality of being protected before also using it. But I would always be using it in a very genuine way, as opposed to manipulating, because, again, to your question, that manipulation of marketing, it's a pretty dark art, and it can bite you in the arse pretty hard if you get it wrong.
Mm-hmm. And even, what you have me thinking as you went through that is even the evolution of the market, in that sense of, if everything, talking about all the different versions of the framing that you're talking about, if that's everywhere, then all of a sudden that means nothing. Like the fear of scarcity, and I don't think we're necessarily at that point yet, but when there's this artificial scarcity put in just about everything, all of a sudden it's fear of scarcity is almost gone, because you have that second layer that's like, oh, well, they're probably faking it on me. And I think that's the really interesting thing as things evolve, because we're talking about Dan Kahneman. I'm thinking of Richard Thaler with Nudge and these different books, and it's like, well, those books have been out for years, and you got all of this, and then it's like almost that next layer on top to stay in the game there. So I know you're an avid reader, so that might just be the answer to this question. But St. how do you kind of anticipate that next level of it and kind of stay ahead of the game in that sense?
I think the main thing is to be aware of that, and that's a whole critical thinking thing, is not taking things at face value. I'm always been deeply fascinated. Maybe it's just me being a bit weird, but I always study behavior and think, why is someone doing what they're doing? Why are people reacting in that way? And then I've kind of followed that kind of curiosity and that fascination. So to your point, Camden, I think the sensitization of psychological nudges and the manipulation of human behavior and biases is rife. And a lot of people are desensitized to it. And then what they do is the companies will parallel attack. So they might let's use an example of a stack here, a psychological stack. I've just made this concept up. I make most things up as I talk. So I'm sure I get busted at some point. But you've got social proof, like everyone's got one. And then you've got scarcity bias. And then you've got endowment effect. So we call so you stack all these biases on top to nudge the person to make a purchase. So, another example of a human bias is what we call the IKEA effect, which is the endowment effect. This is the reason why we try to sell our automobiles, our cars, our houses for much more than they're worth, because we've invested in them. If we've made something, we feel it's worth more because we've invested in that house, we've invested in the car. That car is definitely worth $20,000, and the market's saying it's not worth more than 10. Because we've overvalued it because we've overinvested in it. So there's all these biases coming into play. And Richard Thaler and Daniel Kahneman and all these guys do it really, really well. And even Robert Cialdini, Influence, that was the first book I read on social science. And that was literally a gateway for me learning more about the subject. So, again, probably haven't answered your question, but they stack it. And then they sensitize it, and so they continue to stack it to combat that sensitivity or that sensitization. And I believe that is a word.
Do you think, to rephrase the question much better after that, do you think that it's almost like an overcorrection is the better way? It's there's so much extra of the nudges and everything there that it's just playing it out in plain English is almost the better way, and it's kind of cyclical in that nature almost?
Yeah, I think what happens is sometimes I think we're probably maybe a little bit of the outliers where we're really aware of this stuff, but for the general population, they're not so aware. What's happening is a lot of brands are going back to fundamental purpose, which is obviously in your guys in your domain. They go back to their why. The Adam Grants and the Simon Sinek's of this world. Talk about the why. Before the how and the what. But they're going back to root fundamentals, like what is their reason for being? Like Patagonia is a great example of that. But what is their true reason for being? What's the fundamental truth? Why do they matter? What's meaningful about them? And people then buy into that purpose and they become part of that tribe. And I'm not trying to be convenient or cute to, retrofit into your guys' gig, but there's a lot to say that when the opposite of manipulation is motivation. And truly to motivate people, you have to moat around a truth that moves that individual. And it can still be psychologically based, because people want to be part of a tribe, because our survival mechanism is dependent on being part of a tribe, part of a herd that will look after us. So when we're sleeping, that saber-toothed tiger doesn't come and eat us all up. So, yeah, hopefully that helps.
That's fascinating. And I wanted to, you touched on it once and actually a couple of times already, is the whole marketing sales lash up. And you and I had a great conversation about this a few weeks ago, and how this becomes a competing stovepipes in the office. How do you see what would you create in the ideal sense in that marketing and sales working together in that perfect world?
Yeah. So some of your vets and some of your guys and girls that have been in service, they might be in a role where they've got, they're probably more operationally weighted and logistically weighted. That's where their strength sits. So they're managing teams, and two teams that sort of fight like cat and dog, huge generalization, but majority of the time, are sales and marketing teams. This is the narrative. This is the dialogue that goes on between the two. The sales team go, we're making all the money, we're the profit center. And then they point back at the marketing team and go, you guys are spending all the money and you're the cost center. And can you guys just get us some freaking leads and earn your salaries that we're paying for? So it gets pretty, it gets pretty neggy and pretty tension. And so the solution is centralizing. So I see this mistake. I'm a big fan of centralizing sales and marketing teams, because they are interdependent, they're codependent, they should be integrated, because a sales team needs quality leads. And also a marketing needs quality insights. And the best people to give you those insights so you connect with the conversation that your customers are having are your frontline sales team, because they're the ones having the conversation day in, day out. And the worst thing you can do is create marketing that is done in the absence or the isolation of your actual market. So, my goodness, and again, I'll try not to curse too much because it makes me pretty riled. There are so many marketers, the majority of marketers, that do not actually understand their market. Now, you as a paid professional, your number one job is to understand your market. Otis, in your world, your number one job is to understand the enemy and get your intel and be planned and prepared. So marketers don't go deep enough, but if they enroll their sales buddies and start treating them together as a team rather than as an enemy, as an ally, not an enemy, they can get the most wonderful insights that really help them understand this is what our specific customers are saying and doing and needing and wanting. And then you can take that back to the sales team, back to the marketing team, and they can create wonderful marketing campaigns for you. So, again, probably long answer to a simple question, but I would centralize them. Having them separate only creates division and only reinforces the division, because that fiefdom, that patch protection, again, loss aversion. Oh, well, we want the money for training. No, we want the money for some fancy marketing ads and some brochures and some direct mail drops and some press or print. And it's like, well, where's the leads? So this stuff, this will go on forever, this dynamic between sales and marketing.
Yeah, actually, who was I? I had this talk with a group of people yesterday, that very same thing of, you hire these high quality people that are hard chargers, hard workers, they're going to get the job done, and you put them in charge and you let them run, and then that's what happens. They're running so hard, they're focused on their marketing space so hard that's all they care about, and it's the primary thing. And being successful in that next ad, that next piece, that next piece of content, whatever it is. And they never even think and stop to crosstalk, and it becomes a huge problem throughout the organization in the stovepipes.
Do y'all think that it comes from just it being built on old iterations of itself? Because it seems like almost every entrepreneur I talk with kind of has the same moment of like, why are these so separate? When you're doing every job yourself, you can see the synergies there, and then. Yeah. But then almost every larger company seems to have that huge division there. Do you think it's just a case of them building on old iterations and, not making that change, or what do you think that is?
Yeah, I think that's really smart, Camden, around when you're running your own business yourself, you have to be everything. You're jack of all trades, master of none. I'm doing the marketing, I'm doing the sales, I'm doing ops, I'm doing finance, I'm doing HR. All this. Well, you're not doing HR because you're a boss of yourself, right? I've got a really bad boss, me. But with that, I think what happens is as they branch out as businesses and they grow into teenagers, into adulthood, so to speak, they have to have someone who looks after marketing and have to have someone who looks after sales. And this sort of compartmentalism or siloism, literally picture the metaphor being silos. There's different silos, but these silos need to feed into each other, and as a result, never the two shall meet. I've blogged and written about this a lot, is if you could get a sales and marketing team truly working together as one team, which is what I think some of your listeners have a gift of doing, because that's what they're paid to do, that's what they've been trained to do in some of the most toughest, challenging, exceptional environments. When it comes to corporate and business, it's like, I need these teams to be working together. So you hire some really exceptional, highly paid, maybe even overpaid marketers or salespeople, and there's a whole job to be done on selection there, which we might talk about. And you need to make sure they're all working together as one team on one common purpose, one cause, one goal, one mission, one vision. And it's like, right, we need to truly, truly understand our customer at a very intimate level, so everyone is in the job of intel. So we all need to be talking, we all need to be debriefing what's happening, what's some of those conversations, why is customers doing that, what's their behavior, physical or digital, that we can learn from to improve our product.
And I would take that and dilute it down to living in scarcity. And if you have a culture of scarcity in your company, and even the individual may live in scarcity themselves, they are afraid that if I share this, if I give that over there, then I'm not going to be as important, and then I'm not going to get that promotion, or I might get laid off before that. All these sort of fears that we all deal with when we're in that position. And if you have that sort of a culture of scarcity in your organization, then that's what's going to happen. You're going to have people hold on to what they do, and they're going to hold on to it so tight, because if they share any of that, then they're afraid that they're not going to be as important and as value added to the organization. And that's a huge problem.
100%. I'm so glad you reinforced that, because all scarcity, or most reactions of human behavior, come from fear. They're fear-based. Mm-hmm. So any emotional state is usually fear-based. So what we have to do is we have to get curious and unpack, why are people fearful of sharing? It comes back to loss aversion, like you said, loss of status, loss of significance, loss of social standing. These are humans' main motivations, because if we have status, significance, and social standing, we get higher up the food chain. We get more food. We get the kill first. Again, back to caveman. We get the best looking mate, men or women, and we get the best food. We get the position. We get to sit closer to the fire, to the chief, etc., etc., etc. So you're absolutely right why people hold so tight to this stuff, because they think that actually a scarcity is actually an insecurity, and that insecurity needs to be confronted in a constructive way, and saying, well, actually, we need to win for everyone. This isn't about you. This is about us and our mission and what we're trying to do, and then remunerate accordingly, because sometimes the incentive is actually a disincentive. Now,
I've got to go with this thought I have, because it's to me, you operate in abundance, and where I'm here's where I'm going with this, because of what you do with your business and how you do it. You share what you know, and I just would love to know, where'd that come from? Because I mean, I'll admit it, I'm a bit of a city boy here. I don't get to, I didn't grow up on a farm, but farming is hard work, but there's a lot of shared action in that farming. So how did you develop this I guess attitude of abundance and sharing what you know and how you do it?
Yeah, look, I think it's a classic case, cliched as it is, and a lot of cliches are actually truisms. That's why we use them. This is why we use quotes, because they're so wise. They're a wise collection of words. I honestly believe that if you serve people, then you will reciprocate back. So you've got to give to get. And what I mean by that is, I fundamentally believe another piece of good advice I was given is generosity is your best strategy. Generosity is your best strategy, because the more you give, the more you're going to get. So if you come from a place of abundance, and I call it generosity, the more people are going to see that you are genuine in your generosity and you're not self-serving, excuse me, and the more that you will get in return. So I'm not some kind of spiritual guy where it's like, I'm just going to give out to the world and expect the universe to come talking back to me. I'm not that kind of guy. But what it is I share a lot of content, as you know, and give very generously on the assumption, which has been proven, that the more I give, the more I get. And again, I've had coaches, I invest a lot in my own personal training, as you know, and my personal development, and they said you need to give so much that you think you're giving away too much. And the reality is, the more people that give, the more you will get. Because people, human beings, again, based on psychology and biases and heuristics, if you give something to something, they're much more compelled to give you something back. Examples, really just basic examples around, hey, how do we have people invite them over for dinner, and what's the last thing they say when you just say your goodbyes that night? And what do you say at the end of the conversation? What do you say at the dinner? We must have you guys over at our place. Yeah. Or someone sits your kids and they go, oh, cool, well, no, we must do that for you. So this whole reciprocation thing is a big thing, and it works very, very well. Now, the other thing, if you don't mind me sort of saying for your listeners as well, is a lot of people, you talked about scarcity before as a scarcity mindset, is if you're promoting your business, it is very important that you must create like an artist. Now, this is an interesting concept. I watched a YouTube video of Seth Godin, very, very big marketer in the States, as you know, very good at what he does. And he says he comes across a lot of people, business owners, marketing people, salespeople, just don't give because they're worried they haven't got enough to give. Now, if you haven't got enough to give, you're not very good. That's the straight of it. Like, if you are worried about running out of, and this is what I hear, oh no, we can't share our best content. We can't share that because that's our stuff. It's like, well, you obviously haven't got any more stuff. So what you need to do is you need to stop consuming content and create more content. So stop being a consumer of content, and instead of watching the news, which is a waste of time, apart from the weather, and start reading books and educating yourself. And then you'll have inspiration because you'll then share more content. And again, it's like this podcast here, or a blog, or an email, or an ebook, or a lead magnet. Like, you're giving, and by the process of giving, the action of giving, you will get back. It's human nature that someone that serves your needs before their own, you will more likely reciprocate. And that's where the sale's made. So we're talking long term, we're not talking short term here. Like, I've got to get something from you and then I'll give you this. No, we flip it. It's an invert, as Charlie Munger talks. You inversion. Like, no, you give and give and give, and then someone will give you something in return. But you've got to give first in order to get back. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I think one interesting thing there, and I don't think in application this matters as much, but I think it's more interesting in, I guess, the philosophy of it, is the idea of the intention behind that. It's like not giving with the intention that you're going to give it back. It's giving with no intention, and then by doing that you get the reciprocation, that like how much the intention matters behind it. Because too often if we don't think about the intention, then it winds up being transactional, and when it's transactional, then it just creates a negative pattern rather than that positive pattern.
Yeah, Camden, 100%, you're on point. That word intention is such a big one. Like, I think subconsciously, subliminally, we can pick up on people's intention, whether it's genuine or disingenuine. And again, it comes back to our caveman tans, it comes back to our spider sense. Like, before we could communicate verbally, we were having to watch and observe people and what they were doing and the context of what they're doing. And we would then know, we would be able to predict if that pattern was real or unreal, you know. So like, the really good point you're making there around intention. For me, again, back to the whole psychology and the biases and the human behavior, regardless of what business you're in, get fascinated about the intent behind people's behavior. Like, why are they doing what they're doing? Why do they respond or react in that way? What's driving that behavior? And that driving that behavior is an intent or a motive. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we unpacked at the start, you know, when Otis was asking, like, what's the basic things, why do people buy? So they clothe themselves to keep themselves warm. They nourish themselves to feed and look after the family. And then we go higher and higher and higher. So, yeah, intent is massive. And if your intent is right, then you will be rewarded. If your intent is wrong and it's self-serving, you will be punished. Because you'll get found out.
You know what?
You're a fake.
And, you know, that makes me think of, even just in the social context, like talking about why somebody thinks a certain way. I think that we all are enamored with the idea that we want to understand how the other people think. You know, even if you step into the political realm of, it's like, well, why could someone ever vote that way, whatever way that is? But so often it comes from the poor intention of it's trying to get them to switch or trying to convince them the other way, rather than a genuine thirst for understanding. And I think that applies in so well with sales on it, you know, because I guess really in the political world you're talking sale of ideas anyway. But it's just that if you come in with that intention where it's like, I'm trying to understand what's going on there, why you're feeling this way, you still feel like you're being sold to, if that's what the intention is. Like, if I asked Sinjin, if I sat you down for 45 minutes to talk to you about your family and your son's rugby and all this kind of stuff, and then but my intention the entire time was to get you to ship him up here to Tucson so I could put him in a rugby camp for thousands of dollars, you're going to smell that out by the way I'm having that conversation. You're going to tell that I'm not being genuine while I'm in there.
Yeah, I would happily give you $2,000 to look after my child, because he's a maniac. He's funny enough, he's actually next door because it's a national holiday here. But on that, you're absolutely right. Now, here's the thing: we are psychologically attuned to people's intention. We can sense it. This is, you know, our sort of spider sense, as I call it, our instinct of picking up people's real vibe. What I train is, it's very, very important that we serve before we sell. Now, all your listeners have obviously been in serving their nation, their country, and a huge sacrifice for them and their families. In sales, you need to stop selling and you need to start serving. And when you serve, you sell. So if I unpack that more for your listeners, here's the thing. If you serve the best interests of your buyer rather than the best interests of yourself, you will make more sales. It might take you longer. It might take more iterations, longer sales cycles, higher cost to acquire, higher cost to sell, but you will get the sale because they'll see you're genuinely interested in trying to understand and support that buyer to make the best decision for them, not for you. It's so important that you focus on supporting the buyer's decision, whether it's you or someone else. So if you can serve their needs because you've identified that that's something you can generally help them with, then it's your moral duty to sell your product or service to them. And you should, because you know you can help them. You have that conviction and confidence because you've qualified that you can help them. But if you can't, the moral and right and ethical thing is to say, I don't think we can help you achieve what you want to achieve based on the conversation we've had, but here are some people that can. And you need to do that. And we call it integrity, right? But the reality is you must serve rather than sell. And the biggest thing I picked up on is, now this is hopefully a real gift for your listeners who are understanding and want to understand how to sell better. Stop selling. Stop selling. I say categorically in every training program we onboard and kickstart on our calls, to say the problem with sales is selling. I'm going to teach you how not to sell. And they go, what? St. John, this is a sales training program. Like we need to sell some tractors, we need to sell some fertilizer, we need to sell some fuel, we need to sell some genetics, some bulls, some rams, some sheep, whatever you're selling. I said the problem with sales is selling. Let's focus on signaling buyer safety. And we do that by the intent and quality of our questions. So what we do is we ask really good questions that convey the sincerity of our intent to serve. So what that means is we are serving the needs, the customer psychologically, physiologically. You can see the patterns, even the non-verbal they give you. They can see, and you can see with your own eyes if you watch them, because a lot of people, don't see, right? They don't actually see the person as they're being, observing them and how those words are landing. They will realise, they deep down psychologically know that you have got their best interests at heart. The most important thing you can do is support your buyer to make the most accurate and informed decision for them, not for you. And you do that, you'll make more sales.
I want to touch on something that comes up a lot that you hear about, and that's the adding value. And how does that fit into the picture? I've closed the deal, and you've bought 12, and I give you the baker's dozen. How does that adding value fit into this the full cycle, if you will?
Yeah, I would say adding value doesn't start at the end of the sale, it starts at the start of the sale. So what you're doing is you're adding value. So regardless if they buy from you or not, you want to make sure that's a really good sales experience. It's a really good buying experience. So no one comes home, Otis or Camden, St. John or any listener doesn't come home and go, I just got sold to. It was great. I love being sold to. You come home and you go, I just bought this amazing thing. And what happens is a proper sales experience is effortless. It's not forced. It's genuine. It has a flow. It's seamless. It's frictionless. And so you're just having a conversation. So the creating value, the adding value, starts from the very start. So with a question like, what would you like? We go to shops and retail and they go, how can I help you? And of course our defences go straight up. So we have a different way of doing that is, hey, actually, welcome to the store. Take a look around, help yourself. If you need anything, I'm over there. Much easier way of handling that. But the questions we ask in our world is like, what problem are you trying to solve? What does success look like for you? What does a good season look like for you? If we're sitting down 12 months from now, what would a good result look like for you? We're focused on them. We're not focused on us. So creating value starts from the start, from the very, very start. In fact, creating value starts before the sale. Otis, what we were talking about earlier, which is about giving a cadence of content which is valuable, enriching, unique, rare information that helps your buyer buy. Because if you get that right, they're already halfway home and they pre-qualify themselves and go, you are the guys or girls for us because you've helped me so much. Because remember too, that the buyer journey, generally Gartner research or CEB research or any of the sales research shows, on average, a buyer is 57% of the way through their buying journey before they even pick up the phone to the company or the sales team. They're already 57% of the way through. So you could influence that because the number of digital touch points they're looking at, the reviews, the Google reviews, the YouTubes, the ebooks, the emails you send, the Facebook, the social, you can influence that. So you create value from the start, even before the sale. So creating value isn't a thing at the end, it's a thing at the start. And it's continuous. And it also continues after the sale. Like if you're buying a tractor, we know from all our farming panels that we do you know which is the most important milestone in that buyer's journey? It isn't delivery of the shiny new tractor. It's the first physical call after the tractor's been used or the implement the machinery and going, how is that machine going for you? I'd love to come out and see how it's working for you. Is there anything else we need to do with it? How is it, that header, the driller, the rake, the mower, the tedder, whatever you're selling. It's the follow-up because it shows a genuine courtesy to serve, not to sell. There's no reason why they need to follow up because they made the sale, right? Why do I need to follow up? But they follow up because they're showing a sincerity to serve your best interest. We want to make sure that machine's working for you. I have had one Toyota dealer here phone me up after buying a new car and saying, how's it going for you? No one. They've just made the sale and then they move on.
That's awesome. And talking about adding value, man, the value that I've gotten out of this, and I know our listeners are going to get out of this too as they listen to it. And I was just thinking, one of my favorite things, and you and I in our previous conversations have said this before, or you've said this to me before, for my what did I learn, and it's just such a good foot stomper. It's stop consuming and start creating. Right, that one, because we're out there, give me this, give me this, give me this, and it's like, how about you reshare what you know, and it's amazing how you can do that and come up with so much stuff, so much value added to your clients, to your audience in that respect. So that's for me, that's one of them. I could list 4 or 5 more, of course. Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
Oh, I just wanted to add on to yours because that makes me think of, in I don't know which book it is, but in Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, he talks about, reading all of these old philosophers and reading about these politicians and stuff. And he says, well, Credo says this, well, what say you? And I think that's a really important step. And it's the same kind of thing of like just taking that step and starting to create and put your own mark on things, because without it, you're just going to keep reorganizing other ideas rather than actually building your own at any point. Because you guys got the bookshelves behind you. Mine's off to my left here. But we all have these big bookshelves, all these great ideas. And it's not reading them and then echoing it back to people that's good. It's synthesizing that into the new insights and new information and putting your own name on it. But going into what I learned, definitely wrote down a few book titles I'm adding to the list. But the big thing was to give so much that you think you're giving away too much. And that's a good measure for me, I think, of just thinking, just keep giving it away and until you think you're giving too much, and then maybe give a little bit more.
Yeah, 100%. And other thing that I learned as well is you must out-teach to outsell. You got to out-teach to outsell. So what it is, you those that educate the market own the market. And we have so many tools at our disposal these days. We're absolutely gifted and blessed with the tools we're given that we can really, really help our buyers buy and make the best decision. You're going to trust someone. No one trusts salespeople because they think they're self-serving. The best and easiest way to make more sales is to be everything that everyone else isn't. And it's just a flip. So you zig when they zag. So 95% of sales reps are selling to serve their needs. Well, why don't you just serve your buyer's needs? Instead of focusing on selling, focusing on buying. Instead of focusing on consuming, focus on creating. And it's very simple. You just need to hit it where they ain't. And you need to be everything that they're not. So it's really easy to differentiate yourself by being everything that others aren't. Because if you're doing what everyone else is doing, you're not offering something that's unique. And to be honest, the majority of salespeople do it wrong because they focus on selling, not focus on supporting the buyer to make the best and most accurate and informed decision. So I hope that helps.
Oh, yeah. So, Jim, how about you, man? What'd you learn?
I learned that from our conversation, I think, exactly what I've talked about is that you need to be selfless, I think. And I'm massively into this whole concept of generosity being your best strategy. And, just by us jamming and talking, and it's a real privilege to be on the show, is like, I don't care, even if it just helps one person, I've made an impact. And I don't mind, no one's paying each other to be here. We're all donating our time freely. And at the end of the day, if you have some talent or some gifts or some value or some knowledge, and we talked earlier in the call around, having, everyone's got something to give. Everyone's got something to give, something of value, some skill set. Get out there and give it, and then you'll get something back. That's what I've learned, and I continue to learn. The most important thing is, as well, is when you say, what do you learn? I'd say I'm still learning. What I've learned is you've got to continue to learn lifelong.
That's right.
So
That's
be
right.
a continual student.
Yeah, love it.
Well, neither one of you said that you learned the term over psychology-ing, so that was a little disappointing. But I guess.
Yeah, well, it's only because I can't pronounce it, and I definitely can't spell it. And I mean, I still have problems with the word specificity, which I've only literally learned to pronounce properly. And I don't really pronounce my words properly at the best of times anyway, because I've got this sort of Kiwi, Aussie, English accent mongrel thing going on. So, yeah.
Awesome. Sinjin, how folks find you, follow you, learn more about what you got going on?
Sure. No, I appreciate that. I'm on LinkedIn, pretty visible on LinkedIn. I think if you just Google me, I have a business called Agrarian, which is spelled Agraian. I think we can put the link in the show notes, and you can find me on the website and what we do. I have a podcast, but there's not many Sinjins in the world, so thankfully. So just Google my name, and I should pop up, and you'll see me on Facebook and LinkedIn and the podcast, and yeah, reach out if you want to be added to my email list. Even if you're not in the rural or agricultural business, I hope what I've shared here, they're principles for any business around basic psychological principles around selling and buying.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for your time today, and especially taking a little time off from holidaying today. So we appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no, it's been great being here, guys. I've loved it.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to the Cam and Otis Show, and a special thanks to our guest, Sinjin, for joining us today. If you enjoyed today,